Well, the Sharks are on a 4-game losing streak where they've blown the lead in all 4 of those games. And they've also given up important goals in the dying seconds of 3 out of the 4 of those games as well. And also, Askarov is the goalie of the future, and we got a good glimpse of what he can see in the future from what one game this last Saturday. Let's tear into it. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 10 of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Dave, and wherever you are, whatever you're listening from, I appreciate you joining me here today. And well, we have a rough episode to talk about because the Sharks are officially on a 4-game losing streak. They have lost every single game, as I said in the opening teaser, by a goal. They've blown the lead every single time. And out of the 3 games out of the 4, they've seemed to end up letting a goal in within the last few seconds. Against Utah, Utah would score the game winner with 44 seconds left in the game. Edmonton would score the game winner with about a minute and 13 seconds left in the game. And Edmonton, with the biggest heartbreaker, they scored with 18 seconds left, and the Sharks would be holding on to 2-1 lead basically for the whole game and just be hanging on from their heels. And Edmonton would just end up showing how good they are and scoring with 18 seconds left and then 18 seconds into OT to win the game. And the Sharks are just, well, they're outplayed by our team. There's nothing you can say about that. Winnipeg is a contender, number 1 contender. Colorado, even with their struggles, they still are an elite team, showing pieces of their form that won a cup a few years ago. They're still a very, very solid team. And Edmonton is just, unbeatable. They had their problems at the beginning of the season, but they've obviously figured it out. They got 2 of the best players in the world to back them up, and they're the ones that really, showed up against the Sharks in that game. But yeah, the Sharks just really were outplayed by all 3 games. There were some positives to look at in some of them. The Sharks did end up holding on to the lead. They ended up not outplaying them in some parts of each game, but in all 3 games they ended up just being beaten by a better team, just to show that this Sharks team has a lot more to learn. Like I said, there's positives to look at for this team, but there's also just things that the Sharks aren't quite good at. Mainly when they're hemmed against their own zone, they really can't get up and have the energy to kind of outplay them and get themselves out of that trouble, then turn the momentum on their side. It just seems like when the other team is really pushing pressure on them, they're on their heels and they just don't know what to do. They'll make really sloppy clears, sloppy giveaways, and that ends up costing them a lot, and even some dumb penalties that hurt them. I mean, it's not as bad as it was in the beginning of the season when the Sharks were giving up really, really bad penalties and just figuring things out. But there are still shades of that did cost them in this game. And also special teams in general, like when the Sharks on the power play as well, they really haven't been able to capitalize during certain situations this week. Obviously, when we tear down to the games, we're going to talk more about that. But the biggest thing about these 3 games is just how the Sharks blew the lead, and also just when they're up, they just can't seem to have that killer instinct to keep pushing forward to try and make sure they close the game up. It seems like it's really in their heads to try and win that game when they're up, that they can't do it at all. But again, these are good teams, so this year I couldn't really look at it as a terrible thing. These are just teams that are just better, more mature, well-rounded, and the Sharks are still trying to figure things out. I mean, their best players right now are pretty much young. So again, I wouldn't say it's an end of the world kind of thing, but this is just, it's a disheartening thing it's watching as a fan, right? So right now the Sharks are 4th from last place. They have 28 points. They've been hovering around that, but technically if we go into points per game state, they're about 2nd last place. If you consider the Blackhawks and the Sabres have the same points per game streak at 3.382, and the Sharks are at 0.389. So yeah, the Sharks are 28 points. They're on a terrible 4-game losing streak. They did get a point against Edmonton, which is kind of like the sweet spot, I guess you could say, but it's not really anything great. The Sharks are still doing bad in that part. But in terms of the standings, the Sharks at least aren't last when it comes to goals for, goals against. The Sharks are actually doing pretty well for goals for. They probably could say it's because of the youth lineup and the way the Sharks play. They have 98 goals for, so they're about 10th from last place, which is pretty much a good upside. And the upside about the goals against, the Sharks aren't terribly last place, but they are last in terms of goal differential. In terms of goals against, they have 129. Pittsburgh has 1 more at 130, but their goal differential is minus 31, which is the worst in the NHL right now. So the Sharks obviously got to figure that out. yeah, they're just not looking very, very good in terms of those things. In terms of the top players in points, Granlund is still leading the way, but he's lost his points per game status, where it's a point a game. Now he's got 32 points in 34 games. So this week he's kind of been lagging a bit. Eklund's been fairly consistent. He's been getting a lot of assists, not so much in the goals department, but he did get one goal that kind of got a monkey off his back earlier this week. And Jake Wallman rounds out the top three with 25 points in 31 games. Celebrini is climbing up, which is not a surprise. He easily is the best guy in points per game now. He took over Granlund with his 0.96 points per game with 23 points in 24 games. And obviously, Celebrini is the talk of the team. He's already taken control as probably the best player on this team, even as an 18-year-old kid. Before he came back from injury, Granlund really was that consistent guy that was putting up the points and he could play the whole all-around game. But Celebrini, really, you can't stop gushing about this kid. He is from all around the ice, from the defensive zone, the offensive zone. He's just taking care of business in every single way. And I can't stop talking just everything good about this kid. The way he evades players, the way he has that one move where he kind of keeps the puck away from a player, and you're not cockily, but almost arrogantly, he'll leave the puck out in the open to try and get space from the other guy before he goes for the puck. And he knows how to evade people really well. He just is a gritty player. He'll go into corners and he'll really fight for the puck and use one hand to try and make sure he gets possession or gets the puck to his teammates and things like that. Just everything he does is incredible. His vision, his skill, his speed. He's just glimpses of what he can be in the future. It's just really exciting to see. So I'm pretty sure by the time we end this season, Celebrini will lead the team in points, unless Granlund ends up going on some kind of a tear. But I think that trophy is slowly going away, and Celebrini is slowly climbing up. He's already almost ahead of Wallman and just about to pass Eklund. And I can guess that they might do that in the next couple of weeks, maximum. So that's where the Sharks are right now. The state of the Sharks, they're floundering a lot. They can't seem to keep hold of the lead, but that's always been a problem. And near the end of the game, you'll either see the Sharks when they're behind in a game, which hasn't happened in a while because they've had a lead most of the time. When they're behind, they're really pushing to get a goal, which is something really nice to see, that they don't give up. But when they're leading near the end of the game, it seems the opposite, that they're always on their heels and they can't seem to come back from that. They just seem to really, really struggle with that. And there's something to do with confidence. Maybe it's the youth, but that would change if they could figure that out, their luck would completely change. And maybe they should just play with the behind the whole game. Maybe that will give them the chance to actually win at the end, because they really seem to stand above everything else when they're down or tied near the end. They seem to always get that go-ahead goal or that tying goal near the end of the game where they just don't give up. So yeah, maybe that's what they do, is just play with the down the whole time. But on the other hand, another person to talk about is Yaroslav Askarov. Now, he got called up. Unfortunately, Vanecek got hit in the face with a puck while he was actually just on the bench. He wasn't even playing the game. It was against the Winnipeg Jets on Tuesday. He just hit the puck in the face, and no one really knew what happened to him. It was kind of unknown, and it was just a couple of days ago that we learned that he's going to be week to week. So it looked like it was a pretty nasty hit in the face. Hopefully he'll be back really soon. He'll recover. But with that, Askarov did get called back up again to play a game against the Edmonton Oilers. I'm pretty sure we're going to see him a couple more times before Vanecek goes back down. What can we say about him? We just got to see great glimpses with Askarov against Edmonton. The Sharks did play well against Edmonton in the beginning, but then once the Sharks got the lead, Edmonton would actually put all the pressure on the Sharks, and the Sharks had to hold on, and Askarov would be playing absolutely lights out. In that game against Edmonton, he had a save percentage of 9.29. He let in those 3 goals, but he had to make 42 saves, which is almost the Sharks' record. So this guy would just showing how incredible he is, and he's the type of guy that can, obviously with a better team in front of him, he can make the team win 1-0, 2-0 games. There's obviously still that part where he likes to wander out the net and do some crazy stuff. He's probably not going to get that out of his game anytime soon, so we're going to have to hope that the Sharks are more of a run-and-gun team moving into the future. But looking at Askarov, it looks like he's able to really stop pucks and do things like that. Looking at the other 2 starts, November 25th, we played against the LA Kings. He was .917, which is his worst of the 3 starts, and he only let in 2 goals against with 24 saves. And then against St. Louis in the 21st November, he was a .935. He made 31 saves and only let 2 goals against. And yeah, he's a really, really solid goaltender. You can see why he's so athletic down there. He's really good down low, doing split saves. He's really good at like baiting a lot of players. He'll like leave an open space for him with his glove, make a player think he has a good shot, and then he'll quickly use his glove to kind of stop that. So he has a lot of good tools in his belt that make him a really solid goalie. In my opinion, he's already ready to play in the show. But with the way the Sharks, I think, want to develop him, he's probably going to make it next year. It's without a doubt he's ready. So he will play next year. But I think with this Barracuda team that we have, having him in net to maybe kind of help the kids grow and teach them how to win in important games will be good for him and the Barracuda. So I do like Greer's plan of maybe bringing him up during times like these, but keeping him down there. Because in the AHL right now, he is second place in save percentage at .938. He has 9 wins, 4 losses. He's actually like only behind Devin Cooley for the Calgary Wranglers, who has a 0.94 save percentage. So, I mean, they're really close as it is. And the Wranglers are like a wagon. They're the team that I keep saying the Sharks, the Barracuda have to worry about in the AHL, because that will probably be like a really, really good series that you should mark on your calendars during this spring when they play against each other inevitably, because that's going to be the one, whoever wins this two, you can call it right now, you can mark this down. One of those two teams are going to win the Calder Cup. It's going to be the Calgary or San Jose, because they're both have amazing goaltending and they just have a really good all-around team. And that's a team you have to really worry about with the Wranglers, because that's the AHL team for the Flames, who were in the beginning of the season were kind of seen as like kind of a joke, but they figured things out. And with these young players next year, they might actually go up to Calgary and actually make them very good. But anyways, I'm going too much off the rails here. I want to stick with Askarov and how good he has been. So in terms of save percentage, he's second place in the AHL. And goals against average, he's fourth place with 2 goals against 2.00. Right behind Chicago's Spencer Martin. Second place is Devin Cooley with 1.89. And then Brandon Halverson for Syracuse has 1.79 goals against average. So he's a little bit low down there. I wouldn't say it's too much of a big deal, because he is facing a lot more shots than everybody else. He has 449 shots against versus Spencer Martin for Chicago only has 207, and the first place guy has 439. The only one who has more shots against by a lot is Devin Cooley, who seems to have played a lot more games in the AHL. So he's actually a very legit goalie versus Askarov. Askarov's a very legit goalie too, but he's faced it a little bit less. So I would say, again, Devin Cooley and Askarov would probably be the best 2 goalies in the AHL right now, and it's good to see that one of them is one of ours. So Askarov is probably, like I say, he's not going to be playing the whole season. He's going to probably play a few more games. Whenever someone's hurt or whenever he needs to be called up, maybe after the trade deadline, he might get a few more starts. I do see that Greer's probably going to try and trade either Georgiev or Vanacek before the end of the trade deadline, and we might see Askarov let up, but I can see him also just getting like another plug goalie for the rest of the season, just to kind of fill that slot and let Askarov get a couple of starts, because his spot right now is to get the CUDA into that next level, because we want to see these young players like Cardwell, Graf, and all these other really good young players know what it takes to win, to really get to that next level. So when they join the Sharks, they have that winning pedigree with them. We see a lot of good teams in the past that have done that. The one thing, the Tampa Bay Lightning's team, they won a couple of Calder Cups before they moved up. This was back in 2015 though, and it did take them a few years to win. But Kucherov, Point, these guys won back in the day in the 2014 AHL playoffs before they joined the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they ended up winning a couple of things. There's just a lot of good things that can come from the Calder Cup, and that really help the youth. And I think Askarov being down there is going to be a beneficial thing for him. So with that, let's actually tear into each of the games for the past week. As much as terrible as it's going to be, because as we know, they're all very, very rough games for the Sharks. All right, the first game of the week was Winnipeg in San Jose. San Jose Sharks would lose 4-3. And coming into this, actually at the end of this game, Winnipeg went 3-0-1 in their past 4 games, and they were 5-1-1 in their past 7. So the Sharks are facing a confident juggernaut of a freaking team. I mean, that's like where they are right now, just alone in the standings. They're leading, I believe they're leading the division right now with, let me just check here. Yeah, they're leading their division, actually leading the conference, the Western Conference, with 49 points. And they have 128 goals for and 87 goals against. So, this team is a juggernaut. The Sharks had a whole test this whole week. But in this game, the Sharks actually did hold their own for a very good little while. halfway through the first, the Sharks were out shooting Winnipeg 7-2. They were low event shots because the Winnipeg was very good at using their sticks to stick check people and make sure they poke the puck in the right places. So Winnipeg was in the right place at the right time, but the speed of the Sharks did keep Winnipeg on their toes. So the Winnipeg Jets weren't really trying to weren't able to get really good chances themselves. They had a hard time getting the puck possession, but they were good at limiting the Sharks' high danger chances. But obviously, Kyle Connor would score in the beginning. It was bad coverage by Ceci. Unfortunately, he didn't do a really good job with there. But it would be a 2-on-1 for Winnipeg, and Georgiev panicked and dropped way too early. And it was kind of an ugly one for the Sharks and for Georgiev for being a little bit out in the net. But Connor would score, making it 1-0. And it wasn't very good. But another good thing about this game was the fourth line that I really wanted to talk a lot about is Cunnin, Grudstrom, and Sturm were playing together. And in my opinion, that's the perfect grinding line. Those guys are exactly the kind of guys you would picture in a fourth line shutdown role. Grudstrom has been all over the place this whole season. He's been stuck in that fourth line, but he's been perfect for it. And Sturm is he's a good center. He can win faceoffs, and he just does the right things. You don't expect him to score lots of goals, but he's the type of guy that just, he's just a great all-around dude, great defensive guy. You don't see a lot of goals against when he's out there. And Cunnin, Warsofsky's favorite player right now. He won't stop talking good things about him. He doesn't have that great offensive upside, in my opinion. Like, I know Warsofsky likes to plot him in the first, second line sometimes, but he does have that will. He's a great penalty killer. He's a great time killer, everything like that, and he does have that offensive flair once in a while. I just don't think he's like the best suited for being in a scoring line all the time. But that's that fourth line that was very good, and they looked very good against Winnipeg. In this game, we'll go back to the game itself. In the second period, Vanacek was hit by that puck that came from flew into the bench, and now he's week to week, so that's when Askarov would be called up. And in the second period, Kovalenko was amazing. So he showed his offensive flair in terms of his passing ability. He made this one amazing play for the goal that Toffoli scored, but actually it started off with him from the defensive zone. He made a nice pass to Celebrini, who was waiting to go onside as Kovalenko was in the Shark zone. He made a really nice pass. Celebrini ended up taking onside, and this would lead to the goal where Celebrini was hemmed in the corner by a guy, and he has one hand on his stick. And he manages to pass it to Kovalenko. And Kovalenko would backhand pass it to Toffoli, who was right in front of Hellebuck in the slot, and just snipes it top corner. So we got to see some offensive flair, obviously from Celebrini, who does amazing things. But Kovalenko, with that really nice, just the instinct he has, that backhand pass that was perfectly set up for Toffoli. It was just amazing. So we've seen a lot of that flair that Kovalenko has. Personally, I like to see him finish a little bit more, but I like that he's the kind of guy who's not afraid to go in the corners, and he knows how to make a really good pass, because that's a very valuable thing for that kind of a player. Just to see that offensive flair was very nice. And in the third period, we saw a nice pad save from Georgiev on Niederreiter. He actually had a really good second and third period. Given that first goal against was really ugly, but for the rest of the game, he really was solid. So I don't want to fault him for anything like that. Some goalies have a game or two where they have that goal they wish they didn't give up, and that's what Georgiev had. But he was absolutely solid for the rest of the game, given the fact that the Sharks didn't end up losing. Zetterlund would make a score 3-2 and get a lead, but after Zetterlund had the 3-2 lead, the Sharks are on their heels for the rest of the game. So this is kind of what's been happening the last few games, where the Sharks, they have a lead, they know what to do, and then the Jets are just literally turn on their Jets and end up just out being in the Shark zone and outplaying them, making cycling around them, and just using their speed and their heavy play to get their way, basically have their way on them. The Jets on the power play, Wenberg would trip Appleton, and Connor would snipe on the power play in the hash marks. So that's where the Jets would end up tying it. And then the game-winning goal was Lowry tipping from a DeMello point shot. Ferrero tried boxing him out, but Lowry evaded Ferrero with a nice quick turnaround with his hand-eye coordination. He just hit the puck from midair. There's nothing Ferrero could have done. He tried to box him out as best he could without getting a penalty. All you could really do is interfere with Lowry to try and get that goal from being stopped. So I don't blame Ferrero at all, but that would be the game-winning goal, and that was in the last 13 seconds of the game. And that's just what the Sharks tend to do right now, is put it in our hearts, give us heart attacks at the end, is that they'll be down or they'll be tied, and they'll be in their zone getting hemmed in, and then the team would end up scoring against them. That was pretty much this whole week. So the shots on goal, Sharks had 35 shots to Winnipeg's 33. The first two periods, there was really all the Sharks in terms of the goals, but they were low event shots. But yeah, that's really what ended up costing them, I guess, is the fact that they didn't really get the good shots, quality shots on that. In terms of the power plays, Sharks had 3 power plays and scored on one of them. Jets only did 2 power plays to score with both of them, and both of them were one was Kyle Connor, one was Scheifele, but those were the ones that really kind of gave the Jets their advantage, their momentum, which would end up killing being the one that would beat the Sharks. So Jets win 4-3 in this one. Better than the 8-3 loss the Sharks suffered to the Jets on October 18th. So that is an optimistic kind of view to look at it, because the Sharks, even though the Jets are a way better team and they outplayed the Sharks in the big picture of things, the Sharks did hold their own. They did manage to have possession of the puck. They just couldn't really do something with it. The Jets were just a stronger team, better team, and the Sharks ended up losing that game. All right, the second game of the week would be Colorado visiting the San Jose Sharks on Thursday. The Sharks would end up losing 4-2 this one. But the big story of the game would be Blackwood returning to San Jose since the trade, and Georgiev would be playing against Colorado for the Sharks. Obviously, it'd be a goaltender's duel based on who won the trade. Liljegren would be a healthy scratch for this game. Warsofsky feels he didn't do very much during the Winnipeg game. We wanted to teach him like a lesson for how he played at the end of the third. And Colorado came into this game 0-for-14 on the power play in the last 5 games. So what a team to go against when you're really cold, because the Sharks would prove to give them a nice little break from that slump, because Colorado would get a power play goal 33 seconds in their first power play, about 4 minutes into the first period. And then Wallman and Rantanen would get a 2-minute offset of roughing calls after that. Wallman would get an extra 2 minutes because the refs just really hate the Sharks. And the Sharks were getting their passes picked by Colorado every chance they could. So they couldn't really get momentum going, when every time they would make a pass, Colorado's sticks were just in the right places at the right time, and they would just stifle any offense the Sharks would try and get going. So in the second period, the Sharks did have a good couple of chances where they had scored 2 good goals, one from Grundstrom and one from Eklund, and there were about 5 minutes between each other, and that would give the Sharks a 2-1 lead, the first lead of the game. Sharks even got a power play chance after the second goal, but for a failed coach's challenge, because the Eklund goal that he scored, it was a high stick. It looked like a high stick, but it wasn't the one he scored. It was just before that wasn't called. He tapped the puck from the air, and then the play continued, and then he would score a little bit later. The Colorado coaching staff decided to call it a penalty because they could challenge that play. It turns out they were wrong. The goal still counted, and the Sharks had a chance on the power play, and they wouldn't do nothing with it. But the second period was their best period, which always seems to be the case. Georgiev ended up playing very great in the second period, but the Sharks would end up only leaving the second period with a 2-1 lead. In the third period, though, it was all Colorado. Colorado started the period all over the Sharks zone. Georgiev was tested early, but he made a lot of great saves. San Jose gets a power play 6 minutes in. Celebrini would hit the post, but Colorado would kill that penalty. The first power play unit was very good at cycling the puck and shooting, but Blackwood was robbing them. It's kind of a weird situation to see it in the other end, where Blackwood would end up robbing things for the Sharks, giving him a chance to win. But now it looks like Blackwood, wearing the opposite colors, we got to get a taste of our own medicine there. But Colorado ended up killing that penalty. And Goodrow would get another penalty for holding Makar, and that led to Rantanen's game-tying goal. And then Kiviranta would get the next 2 goals. This kid, I'd never heard of him before, but he had looking like a superstar with the goals he scored against Georgiev. Blackwood made a huge save that led to Kiviranta's first goal, and then Kiviranta would just end up sniping it from there. And then he would end up getting that second goal as well. And Georgiev would do his best Askarov impression when he was pulled. He tried to skate to the bench, but their puck ended up going in front of him. So he decides to try and play the puck with a nice little moment to give us all a heart attack, where there's 2 Colorado guys, a couple of Sharks guys, and you can see he's kind of fumbling with the puck, doesn't know what to do with it. He ends up kind of leaving it, and the Sharks somehow get possession and not end up having an empty net goal against. Georgiev would end up going into the bench, and it'd be a 6-on-5. Eklund did have a great effort preventing the empty net goal, because the Sharks really had a hard time setting up with the play, and this Colorado Avalanche keep kind of dump the puck. They had a really nice dump where it almost led to a breakaway goal, but Eklund dived down and picked the puck off with a stick as he fell to prevent that from happening. But the Sharks had 3 power play chances in the third period. They were all squandered, and Blackwood was amazing in the Shark tank. So the Sharks ended up losing 4-2 in this one. And I think the biggest thing in this one is that even though the Sharks They didn't let in any, immediate goal at the end of the game. They also didn't really. I wouldn't say that the goals they were like they're collapsing too much. That was their biggest thing. I see a lot was they collapse too much, never attacking the point guys. This was just beaten by a better. They're beaten by a better team, but the special teams did hurt them today in this game because they had 3 solid chances in the third period and they ended up blowing them. And during the power play, they were 0 for 4 the whole game, while Colorado made do with their power plays. They were 2 for 4, considering they had such a big drought coming into the game. It looks like they're on the up since then. So yeah, they got 2 power play goals, and they're obviously a dominant team, the better team. But the Sharks, they're just outplayed the whole time. A typical game against a better team. At least there's no things that stood out in terms of like I said, the letting the goals against near the end or anything like that. But the Colorado Avalanche had 3 unanswered goals in the third period and just dominate. So they ended up winning 4-2 on December 19th, the game. They won 4-1 about a couple of months ago on October 20th, and they're going to see each other again on March 6th. And now this takes us to the final game of the week. San Jose Sharks visiting the Edmonton Oilers at Rogers Place. This is the first meeting between each other of the season, and it's kind of a weird schedule between them because this would be on December 21st, and then they would not see each other again until April 3rd. And then, but they'll see each other 3 more times: April 3rd, April 11th, and then April 16th. So they'll get a good break between each other, but then it's going to be a big rush against each other, almost like a series near the end of the season. So that's a weird one. But the game story is the return of the Lund line. So Granlund, Eklund, and Zetterlund would be back sharing the scoring line with Eklund, Celebrini. Or no, sorry, not Eklund. It would be Toffoli, Celebrini, and Kovalenko as the scoring line reverse. I don't know what you'd say, either one's line 1 or 2. I'd say they're kind of interchangeable. Askarov will be starting his first game in a month, and Will Smith is demoted to the 4th line. So I personally don't like that choice because Smith is the type of guy we've already seen that he seems to thrive with other scorers. So I think him playing with the 3rd line with Wenberg, and sometimes it'd be Goodrow, sometimes it'd be Cunnin. I think he doesn't really fit with those kinds of guys. He would be better suited in the first 2 lines, but unfortunately, the other guys are just better at scoring right now, so really, it's hard to really interchange anybody because Kovalenko's really slotted well with Celebrini and Toffoli, and honestly, I like the Lund line. They have chemistry, so unfortunately for Smith, he gets demoted to the 4th line, but he's probably better suited to be in the 3rd line. It is what it is. This is supposed to be like a lesson for him, I guess. He did play fairly well in this game. But anyways, going to this game, the Oilers were 9-2-1 in their last 11. So the Sharks facing yet another juggernaut team that it almost seems like insurmountable to be able to beat them. But the Sharks ended up kind of surprising us for a little bit at least. In the first period, Cunnin would score early. It was a beautiful snipe, just a one-touch pass, sniping at top corner. Askarov would rob Ryan Nugent-Hopkins early in the game as well with a one-timer snipe pass for McDavid. And McDavid is just everywhere in this game. Like, he had a point to prove. I guess he just really wanted to make sure that the Oilers would beat a lower-end team like the Sharks. And yeah, he was just skating everywhere. He'd go behind the ice, skating behind the net, everywhere to make a good pass. He'd always look for an open guy and make a perfect pass to somebody in front of the net. And speaking of that, Hyman would end up tying it for McDavid, making his play around the net to pass to open to McDavid would make a pass behind the net. He'd go around the net and pass to Hyman, who was open the back door, and that would end up being the tying goal. But Ruda would end up making it 2-1 with a point shot from Nurse being screened in front of Pickard, and San Jose would hold on to this lead for pretty much the rest of the game. So even though Edmonton was playing a lot better than the Sharks, Askarov and the Sharks would actually hold on for a pretty good match for the whole time. Speaking of Askarov, he actually had a great first period, except for a couple of heart attack moments. He would actually end up playing the puck a couple of times. One was like 2 feet in front of his net. I don't know why he just couldn't just have shot it up or tried and dumped it, but he decided he would skate up for the puck and just kind of stand there for a bit before he let go of it. But yeah, just a couple of heart attack moments there that he just likes to play the puck. Nothing he can do there. The Sharks are great at picking the Edmonton passes. There was a lot of takeaways that the Sharks did. But the whole first period was just a really fun hockey game. High event. It was back and forth. McDavid doing his things, but the Sharks were actually holding on. Askarov making great saves. Overall, it was just a fun period of hockey that both teams ended up coming out of it with a goal against each. And the second period, Askarov was the star of the show. Positive side was how good Askarov was. Negative side was how the Sharks really were just on their heels the whole time. The beginning, Askarov robbed Janmark point blank, and there's another chance where he made back-to-back saves. He did the splits, and just in the second period, he made 22 saves, which is absolutely wild. And the last minute of the second, Edmonton was pressing hard, and Askarov had to freeze the puck about 3 times. I remember thinking it was like a minute and a half left. I thought, okay, this will be done in a couple of minutes because the game was going so fast as it was. Like, I was about halfway through the second period. Like, it felt like the game was already done, like maybe an hour and a half, like, which is very fast for most hockey games. It was about an hour in the game, and it was like already, I would say an hour 10 minutes, and the game was already going fast till right at the end, where Askarov had to freeze the puck a bunch of times, slow everything down, because the Edmonton Oilers were just all over the Sharks, making these crazy plays. But he would end up holding on, and we get into the third period. So into the third period, Kovalenko having another amazing play to Foley, but Pickard made the first save and he robbed Foley. So Kovalenko just showing his great playmaking skills, which I like to see. But in this game as well, there was a chance. I don't remember which period it was. He had a chance to shoot it and he voted not to. So I worry that he's making such great plays right now with passing that he's overthinking it, and now he's not going to make take shots at all. I don't know if this is something that was normal for Colorado, but his playmaking ability is there. That's a positive sign, but he really needs to shoot when he needs to shoot as well. And Liljegren, with his return since he was scratched the last game, he did have an awful turnover in the San Jose zone. He tried to clear the puck, but he ended up passing it to an Edmonton Oilers point guy. He was on the point, and then Draisaitl ended up having a chance, but he missed the net. This was kind of another huge thing that the Oilers did. They had a lot of wide open nets that they missed. I believe in the end it was 4 in total. But yeah, so that was a bad giveaway by Liljegren there. And halfway through the third, the Sharks were hemmed in their own zone since the second period. So I just want to make a note there that for this whole time through, the Sharks really barely had any chances on the offensive zone. It was all Edmonton, all there. A little bit later, Askarov would rub Podkolzin. Eklund would get a penalty for tripping Bouchard, but it was like a weird fall he would make to the ice, and he kind of had his stick out, and as he fell, he tripped Bouchard. He would make up for it, though. Sharks would kill the penalty, and Eklund would have a chance to set up Celebrini from his office. He would kind of skate behind the net, see an open Celebrini, and Celebrini would make a great shot, but Pickard would make the save. San Jose finally has their own chance of momentum after killing that penalty, so that penalty kill did help them out to get this momentum and energy, but they would be in the Edmonton zone, but they would be very short-lived. The Edmonton Oilers would take advantage of that right after, and Zach Simon would miss the net. And that would be the third wide-open shot net that Edmonton would miss in this game at the time. In the last minute of the game, Grundstrom, while the Sharks, again, are being hemmed in their own zone, he has a terrible clear in the Sharks zone and ends up giving it to an Edmonton guy, which would keep it onside. And then right after that, maybe about a minute later, Ekholm would score with 17 seconds left. So there was a good, 3-4 minutes of just after the Sharks penalty, between the point where after the Sharks killed that penalty and they had a little bit of momentum to right after that moment, it was just all Edmonton in the Sharks zone, and you could just feel like either the Sharks are going to get lucky with this one or something was just going to go wrong. Like, there was no chance the Sharks are going to close this game out. Like, it was either going to be a game tying goal or there was going to be maybe they'll win by the foot of their heels, or whatever that saying is. But they ended up blowing the game. 17 seconds left. The Sharks were completely gassed. Like, there was 3 shifts in a row. One of them was a Celebrini shift where their guys were out there for over a minute. Like, there was the countdown they show in the score where they show the time of each player, and there happened 3 different shifts. One was the Celebrini line, one was the Wenberg line, and I believe the last one was obviously the Grundstrom line, where Grundstrom was they were gassed, and they couldn't do anything to get it out in time before they would actually get lucky and make a change. But yeah, after that, there's too many guys retired. They're on their heels. Eventually, the better team, Edmonton Oilers, would end up scoring. And yeah, we go to OT, and Draisaitl and McDavid would make pretty much take advantage of everything and make nothing of this whole game. Where in the first 18 seconds, they would score. Draisaitl would score from McDavid pass. It was Wallman, Celebrini, and Granlund that overtime versus McDavid, Bouchard, and Draisaitl. So yeah, there's nothing you could do. Askarov tried to make a couple of saves. He was amazing, but nothing you could do there. So Edmonton ended up winning 3-2. Askarov, like I said, was amazing in this game. He just glimpses of what he's going to be in the future, which is nice to see. Yeah, he's probably going to play a couple more times before going back down when Vanecek returns, but it's nice to see that the Sharks do have a stud goalie. There is something to note that does feel different, though. Like, when Blackwood played for the Sharks, and every time he would make these games, there's games he'd have where he would keep the Sharks in it, And it would always feel like the Sharks would get energy from that. Maybe because they knew that Blackwood was more of a veteran. I don't know. But the Sharks would always seem to get a good goal after that. At least maybe it's also we don't see a lot of Askarov. These are always just like pieces we're seeing of him. But Askarov seemed like he was trying to keep the Sharks in this. But yeah, it didn't seem to give the energy for the Sharks that when Blackwood was like making saves for them back in the day, the Sharks would actually like own up to it and start to like play better for that. But yeah, obviously we'll have some more chances to see how Askarov plays for them some more. But yeah, most of this game, San Jose was outplayed by Edmonton. Ever since they were up 2-1, like the Sharks had a good beginning of the game, but that was pretty much it. Like Edmonton was all over them after that, and this would be the fourth straight game that San Jose blows a lead in the third period and loses. At least they got a point in this one, but there's a lot to learn. Obviously, these teams are higher end teams for the Sharks that they still need to learn how to beat. This is something that's going to take time, maybe until next season, once maybe Greer has to add some more guys that are going to fill things out the right way. Like you look at this team and on paper they're fun to watch, they're exciting, but they just don't know how to close out games. They don't have that killer instinct, and they need to learn that, and they need to maybe get guys that can teach them that. But yeah, in the end of this game, the Oilers outshot the Sharks 42-22. The power plays the Sharks were 0 for 1 and Edmonton was 0 for 2, so they meant nothing in this game, and luckily it was a low event in terms of bad penalties. That's positive for the Sharks. The Sharks would out hit the Oilers 18-4, which is a sign indicative usually that the Sharks didn't have puck possession, which in this case was true. 15 block shots to 9 for the Sharks, and the Edmonton Oilers actually have 22 giveaways to 17 for the Sharks, and the takeaways were 5-5. So, like I said before, this was the first game against each other, 3-2. Edmonton will win, and they won't see each other until April, and they'll play 3 games that month. So, hopefully the Sharks will be a little bit more well-rounded by that time, but also there might be more bare bones because it'll be after the trade deadline, depending on what Greer's going to do. Obviously, by this point, we know the Sharks are going to make the playoffs, so whoever Greer can probably give away for that he doesn't see that are going to be in the future will probably be maybe this team. Based on my point is this team will probably be broken down a little bit more. There won't be as much of a well-rounded team here because a lot of players they're able to trade are probably going to be gone. So yeah, we'll see what happens during that time. But yeah, in the end, Sharks lose 3-2, and that's the week for the Sharks. And speaking of struggling, the Barracuda themselves are actually having their own struggles right now. They're on a 2-game losing streak, and they've lost 3 of the last 4. Although the first game they lost against the Reign last Sunday, it wasn't a shootout, 5-4. They beat Coachella Valley 5-2, which is still nice to see that they somehow got this monkey off their back from a team that used to beat them years in a row. But Bakersfield would beat the baby Oilers would beat the baby Sharks 2-0 and then 4-2 on Friday and Saturday consecutively. Barracuda will not be playing again until Saturday against the Henderson Silver Knights and then Sunday again. So they'll get about a week to lick their wounds and kind of figure things out. And they're luckily still second place in the division. Calgary just seems to have that division locked up, basically. I'm really looking forward to seeing the playoffs. I'm telling you, when San Jose, it's going to be San Jose and Calgary in one of the playoff rounds, and it's going to be a fun one. Like, I'm going to definitely watch that series when that shows up, because whoever wins that series is probably going to win the cup. So, yeah, or they'd be the Calder Cup, not the Stanley Cup, by the way. But yeah, like, I'm really looking forward to it, and I really hope that San Jose kind of figures that out, because I think this team has what it takes, and this team can really learn from how to win and before they get graduated into the Sharks organization. So, looking at the scoring, Podorowski has taken over Colin Graff's first place mantle. He had a really hot week. Now he has 10 goals and 18 assists, 28 points in 27 games. Colin Graff remained stagnant at 24 points in 27 games. And Luca Cagnoni still rounds out the top 3 with his defensive points for 22 and 27. And Bstet's 4th place with 17 and 24 games, and Ethan Cardwell slowly climbing up with 15 points in 19 games. And Dan Legushin is finally climbing up as well with 11 points in 18 games. So, yeah, these guys are all had a pretty decent week in terms of scoring. Mostly it'll be Podorowski and Cardwell. I think Cardwell's really gotten a lot of confidence since he's went up for the Sharks for a few games. He's not just that grinder now. He's actually finding ways to score in the net. Maybe he's finding a few secrets how to do it. Yeah, so the Barracuda are struggling a bit right now. They could probably figure it out, but the Tucson Roadrunners and the Ontario Reign are right behind them. They have 32 points each in the division, and San Jose has 34 points, so they got to be a little bit careful, even though that San Jose does have a game in hand on Tucson and 3 games in hand on Ontario. They just got to be careful not to give that up, because that's going to be, it looks like their struggles are starting to catch up to them. They're going from wagon status to like, ooh, I don't know, But yeah, I think when it comes to the playoffs, though, they're going to be a whole different team. I think this team is built better to play in the playoffs. I think they've learned from their whole like run and gun style in the beginning of this season that they can actually do a lot better. So we'll have to see. So that's your Barracuda for the week. And like I said, they're going to play Henderson Silver Knights next weekend on Saturday and Sunday, and let's see what they can do for that. All right, in the final segment of the show, we're going to do scheduled win-loss. So this is basically just the way coaches kind of plan chunks of games out, especially if there's like maybe a road trip. They like to predict which teams that their team should beat or lose, and then kind of maybe get an idea of how many points they should get during those chunks of games. So what I like to do is look ahead to the week the Sharks play their games, and if they should win or lose those games, and how many points you should expect the Sharks to get this week. So last week, I was right in terms of the Sharks losing all 3 games. They did come away with a point versus the Edmonton Oilers, and although they did choke all 3 games, like they had the lead and they had blowing it, all 3 of those teams are just way better teams, so I did expect them to lose to those teams. So the positive side is that the Sharks, were capable of kind of playing to them a bit, in a sense, but they were all beaten in the end because they just aren't to that level yet. And this week is sort of no different. So the Sharks are going to face the Vancouver Canucks tonight, and then they're going to face the Golden Knights and the Flames. So let's start with the Canucks, who are first in the wild card right now with 39 points, and their top point scorer is Quinn Hughes with 40 points in 33 games. Connor Garland with 26 points in 33 games. Elias Pettersson has 26 points in 33 games. Jake DeBrusk, who's having a very good season with Vancouver right now since he signed from Boston. He has 15 goals and 24 points in 33 games. Brock Besser has 10 goals in 26 games and 21 points. And JT Miller, who was injured for a bit, I wanted to mention him because he's 6th place. He has 20 points in 23 games. So he's doing fairly well considering he was out for some significant amount of time. So as well as the Vancouver Canucks are doing, they're not as good as last year. After last year, they did have a really hot start that kind of kept them hovering around first place. And the one thing that is sticking out right now in terms of the storylines is that there is some rumors from the journalists down there that JT Miller and Pettersson are having some kind of a locker room rift, and that someone should be traded soon. But they have been doing everything they can to try, especially the Canucks have been trying to kind of quell this down. Pettersson's talked to the reports and said that there's nothing to it in his own, candid way. You can listen to the interview if you want to. And JT Miller also kind of, sarcastically kind of played it down, saying like, listen, I'll talk with him if you want. We can talk together to you guys to show there's nothing wrong between us. That obviously doesn't mean anything. There might be something going on behind the scenes, but we don't really know. We're never going to know. Maybe if there's a book released, maybe there's some tension between those two, but we know that, teams, even good teams, the players might be able to hate each other, but they have to look above that, right? There was a really good thing with Elliot Friedman's podcast. He was talking about how in the Tampa Bay Lightning, before they won the Cup in 2004, LeCalvier and St. Louis apparently had a lot of heat against each other too. But the GM decided, we're not trading any of these guys. They're professionals. They're gonna play through this, and they're gonna it's beneficial to have these 2 talented guys than it is to replace them just because there's some kind of locker room rift. Even though these guys, even Vancouver Canucks now, they can hate each other and all that, but if they start to win everything that kind of cleans everything up. And they're both very professional players, so I can see that they're just kind of mend the things. But also, seeing a trade, it would be pretty cool to see too. I mean, there were rumors that Pettersson's going to go to Buffalo. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be a very interesting thing to happen if that did. He does just starting a long-term 8-year contract, so I don't know if Canucks are even going to do that based on that commitment they have to him, but that would be wild. So JT Miller has honestly been one of the better players for the Canucks since he's joined. And Pettersson has had his ups and downs. His skill is there, but it's I don't know. It's definitely something that you can consider that maybe does he have that winning skill, or is it just that he's just really talented? So I don't know. But to be honest, I can't see this team without Pettersson because he was always seen as the future. It'd be very weird. But the Sharks, going back to this game, could take advantage of that little uncertainty, that rift. I mean, the Canucks are on a 3-game winning streak right now, so it could be behind them, but the Sharks could take advantage of that, and maybe they could do something. But I think the Sharks are probably going to lose this one because Canucks are just that much of a better team. On Friday against Vegas, so there'll be a Christmas break, obviously, for a little bit. So between Monday and Friday, the Sharks get a nice break, have a nice, turkey with the family or ham or whatever they do, and then they're going to go back to it and play against Vegas. So both will probably be tired from, not tired, but overly rested, if you want to say, to kind of like off their game. So honestly, it could be thrown off. This could be a game that Sharks could win. The Vegas Golden Knights right now are second place in the Pacific Division. Or no, so they're not second place, they're first place. My bad. They're actually, they're first place with 47 points in 33 games. They have 22 wins. They have a 3-game winning streak right now. And, I don't know. I would say that the Vegas Golden Knights are probably going to beat the Sharks, but maybe this is the game where the Sharks upset the Vegas Golden Knights based on the big break. You never know. It's one of those things where a team's that's so good and they're just kind of caught off guard. So I'm going to say the Sharks might win this one in OT. Jack Eichel is leading the team in points, 44 and 33. He's having his career year. Buffalo must be kicking themselves after letting him go for such a weird reason. Barbashev's second place with 30 points in 31 games. Mark Stone, who was away with injury, is actually on a crazy hot streak. He is the most points per game on the team with 28 points in 19 games. And Shea Theodore has 27 points in 32 games. And our old boy, Thomas Hertl, would actually round out the top 5 with 22 points in 33 games. He's a minus 10 actually on this team, which is surprising considering everyone else is way into the positives. I guess the Sharks should be pretty happy they got out of that contract, to be honest. As much as I love Hertl, the way we're rebuilding, it just doesn't really fit our timeline, and that contract looks like it's a little bit heavy right now. So he still rounds it out, and we love to see Hertl do better. I hope he does do better because I do love Hertl, but it looks like he's struggling a little bit for the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm going to say the Sharks might win this one just because the Sharks are due. I don't think they're going to go on a crazy losing streak, and they could catch Vegas on their off guard because of the break. And on Saturday, the Sharks will play the Calgary Flames, and the Calgary Flames right now have 39 points in 34 games. They have a 1-game winning streak, and they're second place they have the second wild card right now. They're tied with Vancouver, but they do have one extra game played, so that's why they're behind. But they're a team that's had their ups and downs right now. They're not like a terrible team to say, but they're not like they're really highly offensive. They're not like a run and gun style. Jonathan Huberdeau has 25 points in 34 games. Nazem Kadri has 22 points in 34 games. Connor Zary rounds out the top 3 with 20 points in 34 games. And then Coronado has 18 points in 29 games. And Mackenzie Weegar is the only defenseman in the top 5 with 18 points in 34 games. So none of these guys are close to over a point a game. They play much more of a defensive style. Huberdeau and Kadri are tied with goals. Huberdeau is obviously massively, underperforming based on his contract. Looking back at like the Eichel and Buffalo, it's also, I'm pretty sure that Calgary's really missing Tkachuk right now. I mean, they had to get rid of him because he didn't want to stay, but like Huberdeau was not the pickup that they expected, and after signing for that contract, it's not really working out. But this is another team the Sharks could beat. They're capable of beating because, again, if they outscore Calgary, they have a chance to beat them. Maybe if Askarov's in net. You never know. They could. I don't want to say they won't, because I should go back and say that Vegas probably could lose that one and win this one, because I don't think the Sharks can win 2 in a row back-to-back in the Shark Tank, but they're in the Shark Tank. So I'm going to go on a bold move. We're going to go crazy here. I'm going to say they're going to win this one too. So the Sharks this week are going to lose to Vancouver tonight. They're going to beat Vegas on Friday and beat Calgary on Saturday. So they're going to come away with 4 points in 3 games, kill that losing streak later in the week, and they're going to start off the new year strong. I guess they're going to play Philadelphia before the new year, but they're going to start the week of the new year strong with a 2-game win streak. So that's my prediction. 2 wins, 1 loss, and let's book it. And that's going to do it for episode 10 of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast. If you managed to listen to the whole podcast, I want to thank you wherever you are and whatever you're listening from. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and everything. And I also just want to wish you a happy holiday week. Obviously, if you celebrate Christmas or whatever else, I just hope you have a good time with you and your family or whoever you're with, and that I look forward to seeing you next week. So thank you again for listening. If you have any comments, you have any suggestions to make, you can reach out to me at Teal Teardown Hockey on Instagram. At Teal Teardown Hockey on Instagram, and at Teal Teardown HKY on X, or leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify and let me know what you think. If you like the show, like or leave a comment as well. It helps with the algorithm, and that's it for me. I will see you next week.